Diplomacy has had its day in the Middle East. It's failed, and there's no one now to stop the killing and destruction in Gaza and Lebanon. My guest this week is Marwan Mwasha, former Jordanian foreign minister and now vice president for studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He sees one major obstacle to ending the current violence.
I'm afraid that in the short term, there is no political force that is willing to put on the table a serious initiative to end the occupation. And therefore, the violence will continue.
And what about Iran's intentions? Will this war only sharpen hatreds in the region and destroy any chance of peace for years to come? Marwan Mwasha, welcome to Conflict Zone. The talking has stopped. The fighting is intensifying in Gaza and Lebanon. How bad is all this going to get?
I'm afraid it might get worse. It is clear that Israel has no strategy except a military one. Nobody is proposing any political horizon for the period after the war. Netanyahu is riding high in the polls after Lebanon and Gaza. And on top of all that, he has no intention, in my view, to reach a ceasefire and appear as if he's giving a gift to Kamala Harris. He would rather see Trump come to power. And so for all these reasons and more, Netanyahu's only strategy today seems to be to prolong the war.
If America can't stop the war in the Middle East, and it's shown many times that it can't, who can?
I'm afraid no one. This is not 1973 when the October War between Israel and Egypt and Syria led to a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. This is not 1991 when the first Gulf War led to the Madrid peace process. Then you had the United States, which was willing and able to lead a process that offered at least some hope that peace might be attainable. Today, the United States is preoccupied with its elections. The Middle East is not a priority to it. The last negotiations that it led were in 2014, 10 years ago. So I'm afraid no one, and the international community, without the leadership of the United States, is not willing to step in. So
are you surprised? I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you surprised that President Biden, you called him passive the other day? Did you expect more from him? He's coming to the end of his term. He's a lame duck president. If he had taken any firm measures like cutting off the weapons more than the gesture that he made, there would have been huge political damage in the run-up to presidential elections. He didn't have much choice, did he?
Well, I'm surprised at the extent he went to in defending Israel. At the beginning, right after October 7, his argument was that Israel was acting in self-defense and he needed to support it. A year after the war, with more than 40,000 people killed, with the destruction in both Gaza and Lebanon, with Israel normalizing the practice of leveling down whole buildings and killing hundreds of people in return for a Hezbollah, mid-career leader or a Gaza Hamas leader. It is surprising that Biden did not do more. It is also more surprising because the continuation of the war is not going to help Kamala Harris. And, if he has Kamala Harris' interest in mind, I thought that he would have been more pressing to end the war than he has been.
But taking part in negotiations, peace process in the Middle East, it's been a catalogue of failure. So the question has to be, why keep on investing in failures, particularly just before a presidential election? That doesn't look any good than having the fighting at full tilt as it is at the moment.
Yes, but at least he can do something to stop the war. I do not expect him to, start or launch another political initiative right before elections, naturally that is not going to happen. But stopping the war before elections will help Kamala Harris. And the fact that he has not done so is a bit surprising.
You have two combatants who don't want to stop, do you? Aaron David Miller, I'm sure you know him, the former State Department official. He said Arab-Israeli negotiations work when the two primary decision makers are in a hurry and when there's urgency. There is no urgency. Sinwar, the Hamas leader, and Netanyahu would prefer no agreement. The only party that's in a hurry, he says, is the Biden administration, and their clock isn't in sync with the others. He's right, isn't he? Neither of the combatants want to stop, do they?
Well, neither of the combatants is willing to stop might be true, but I think it is also true that the United States is not behaving in a way to suggest that they are pushing hard enough to stop this war. And I think they can do more. It is not understandable why the United States keeps sending, these large weapons, these large bombs that kill thousands of civilians. It is not understandable why they keep doing that.
It's understandable in a way that there would be a huge political backlash from pro-Israeli movements in America, wouldn't there?
Look, for the first time in maybe ever, the Arab American vote now is starting to count because the election is going to be decided in swing states, 7 swing states to be exact. But Kamala Harris needs to win all 3 Great Lakes states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. With the present policy, I think there is a very good chance that she might lose Michigan. And if she loses Michigan, where is a large Arab American community, she will not win the elections. So it is not just the Jewish vote that is at stake here in this election. The Arab American vote is starting to count as well.
When it comes to a formula to bring the fighting to a close, you still cling to the idea of eventually a two-state solution, is that right?
I don't, certainly. I think the two-state solution has died a long time ago. Neither the political will exists for a two-state solution, particularly on part of Israel. Netanyahu has called a two-state solution 3 months ago a reward for terrorism. And demographically, with 750,000 settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, there is no way to separate the two communities. So for demographic and political reasons, I just don't see any way that the two-state solution can be effective. The international community has been supporting a two-state solution for the longest time without coupling it with a realistic plan to implement. And by so doing, all that has happened is that Israel has bought time to build more settlements and kill that very two-state solution that the international community supports. So I'm not just optimistic, I just don't see any realistic way to achieve a two-state solution from this point on.
But if there is no two-state solution, and as you say, it's been uppermost in the minds of peace negotiators for many, many years, what's the plan B? Is there one?
We are already, Tim, in a one-state reality. It is not a democratic reality, but it is a one-state reality. Let's remember, this is a 57-year-old occupation. There is no such occupation in modern history. Israel has built a vast network of infrastructure in the West Bank to guard against a two-state solution. We already are in a one-state reality. And in my view, the focus is going to be increasingly one where people will not focus on the shape of a solution, but rather on the rights of people in occupied territory. That is going to be the main question to answer. And I'm afraid that by refusing a two-state solution, Israel is forcing the world to deal not with occupation, but with apartheid very soon.
Isn't there a lot of talk at the moment about another way that the occupation would end, and that would be by pushing out the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank? Jordan is particularly worried about that, isn't it?
Jordan has always been worried about that mass transfer. In fact, Jordan signed a peace treaty with Israel exactly 30 years ago because of this point. Because Jordan felt that by signing a peace treaty with Israel, this argument that Jordan is Palestine will be buried forever, that Jordanian borders will be protected. And in fact, the peace treaty itself has an explicit clause against mass transfer. With what Israel is doing now in Gaza, in the West Bank, what you refer to ethnic cleansing supported by the IDF, the issue of mass transfer has now resurfaced, not only among regular Jordanians, but even some in official Jordan are questioning why was a treaty signed in the first place if Israel says day and night that a two-state solution is a reward for terrorism. The fact is, Tim, that today Israel, by refusing to end the occupation and establish a Palestinian state, and I also assume by rejecting a Palestinian majority, because as of a few years ago, we have today a Palestinian majority living in areas under Israel's control, some as Israeli citizens, but most as people under occupation. If Israel does not want a Palestinian state or a Palestinian majority, then the only alternative for Israel is to get rid of as many Palestinians as possible, either by killing them or by transferring them out of Palestinian territory. That is today Jordan's main concern.
Yes, all of which places Jordan in a very difficult position because a lot of the Palestinians in the West Bank have Jordanian papers and Jordanian national numbers, I think it's called. You don't have the legal right to refuse them entry, do you, into Jordan?
No, not all, of course. Palestinians in the West Bank have Jordanian citizenship, but some do. As you said, I don't know the exact number, but you are talking about hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the West Bank. And of course, Jordan is very worried that Israel will attempt to empty the Palestinian territories out of its citizens and establish, what they have always wanted to do, which is control over all the land from the river to the sea. It is ironic today that when Palestinians say we want the land from the river to the sea, they are criticized, but Israeli ministers are saying this every day, that they want a Jewish state from the river to the sea.
Do you think the Gaza Strip will be annexed? Do you think that's Israel's intentions at the moment?
I think what Israel has done is make Gaza uninhabitable. So it is not just that they, killed 42,000 people or so today in Gaza, but they have destroyed all the infrastructure, the road network.
You don't see it being rebuilt.
The water network. So Gaza has become uninhabitable. And that is, again, the worry that even if Palestinians, and they have learned the lesson from 1948 and they do not want to leave, because they know if they leave their land, they will not be allowed back in. But even with that, Gaza has become uninhabitable. So it is not clear what their future is going to be after the war.
You mentioned the peace agreement between Jordan and Israel. Can it survive this? How fragile is it at the moment? Will it hold?
The relationship between Jordan and Israel cannot go back to where it was before October 7th. That does not mean the treaty itself will be annulled. I don't expect that. Annulling the treaty has a lot of international ramifications that Jordan does not want to get into. However, maintaining a warm peace with Israel, as Jordan has done, signing economic agreements, etc., that cannot remain. Not only because public opinion in Jordan is against it, But because, as I said, even official Jordan today is questioning Israel's intentions vis-a-vis Jordan, not just the Palestinians.
It's not just questioning, is it? You don't have ambassadors in either capital at the moment, do you? So effectively, the peace process is frozen.
Absolutely. And the Jordanian foreign minister basically said that. The peace treaty is on the shelf, he said, gathering dust. It is, as I said, we signed a peace treaty, Tim, primarily to preserve Jordanian borders and to guard against the Jordan is Palestine argument. If Israel is not respecting that principle anymore, then what purpose is the treaty serve?
Israel will tell you that it's defending its security and the security of its people, which was subject to atrocious attack on October the 7th, and everything that it's doing is in connection with that. And your response to that would be?
I don't see how killing 42,000 civilians in Gaza, even if some of them are combatants, I don't see how that is serving Israel's security. I think what Netanyahu has succeeded very well in doing is radicalizing not just the Palestinian public, but the Arab public at large. That's what he has succeeded in doing. Today, most Palestinians, 65% according to one poll, in the West Bank and Gaza, believe that the only way to end the occupation is armed resistance. That number never got up beyond 20-25% until October 7th. Today, the Palestinian public is severely radicalized. So is the Israeli public, of course, on the other side. That's what Netanyahu succeeded in doing, is pushing the peace prospects far away and resulting in people who do not believe in peace and who only now believe in armed resistance.
One of the major problems in dealing with the Palestinians, and you will know this from your time working on the Arab Peace Initiative, has been the endemic Palestinian disunity, the total inability of Hamas and Fatah to put aside their factional disputes and come to a permanent arrangement. This has been part of the problem, hasn't it, all along?
Of course. The Palestinians suffer, in my view, from two problems today. One, their leadership was elected last in 2006. Their leadership is not representative. Most Palestinians, according to one poll, 88% want Abu Mazen out. It is clear that the Palestinians need new leadership. And such leadership can only come through elections. Elections, I'm afraid, that nobody wants. Not the Palestinian leadership itself, not Israel, and not the United States.
But there's no chance now, is there? There's no chance. You might as well have elections on the moon.
There's no chance. And the other problem is what you said, the disunity. It is, most Palestinians today feel that it is not acceptable anymore for the PA and Hamas not to talk to each other.
So even if they had a state, it would be racked by disunity. There would be no freedom of speech, which is something that a lot of people complain about in the West Bank under Palestinian Authority. There would be torture carried out in Palestinian prisons, which is also a big complaint from the human rights groups. Is that the kind of state that Palestine would have if it ever got one?
Well, the question, Tim, is also, is what Israel doing the kind of state we want to live by? Where, it seems that all the strategy they have is military. The only way to end all this is to end the occupation. People don't talk about this. This is the core problem. There is a 57-year-old occupation that needs to end. And if the occupation does not end, this is the discourse that you are going to face. A militaristic Israel and the radical Palestinian population. There is no way to end this except by ending the occupation. Israel talks about ending the military capability of Hamas. Hamas is more than a military organization. It is an idea. And if you want to counter it, you have to counter it, with a counter idea that promises a political horizon that ends the occupation. If such a horizon is not seriously promised to the Palestinian population, they are going, I assure you, to continue to see violence as the only way to end their suffering.
Let's talk for a moment, if we may, about Lebanon. Not all Arabs are upset by what Israel is doing, are they? I'm told some Sunni groups are glad to see the Shia group Hezbollah humbled. One former official in Lebanon said they'd been holding a gun to the state's head for far too long. To what extent do you think opponents of Hezbollah will see the war as a springboard for their own political advantage and try to configure the political map to suit them rather than the Shia?
Well, I think there is a dire need for a political process that is inclusive in Lebanon. And it is a fact that Hezbollah has prevented such an inclusive process for the longest time. If a scenario evolves out of this that brings together all factions in Lebanon to elect a new president, to elect a new government, and to start moving out of this political dysfunctional state, then yeah, this might be a positive development. But I don't want to see this development, resulting in the mass killings that we are seeing in Lebanon. Lebanon already is a very weak state with real economic problems. They don't need more destruction. And so what I'm hoping for is first to arrive at a ceasefire. And then after the ceasefire, then arrive at a political process, maybe along the Doha process, 30 years ago that brought together all Lebanese factions in Qatar. Yes, there needs to be such a process so that Lebanon can start recovery. But first things first, we need a ceasefire.
And if there isn't a settlement and there isn't a ceasefire, could the current war trigger another civil war inside Lebanon? Is there that danger?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of this, Tim, because the Lebanese, the memories of the civil war from 75 to 90 are still fresh in Lebanese minds. They don't want to go through another civil war. They have not had a civil war since 1990. They understand that Lebanon's economic problems are such that another civil war is going to be devastating. I don't think anybody wants it, not Hezbollah and not the forces opposing Hezbollah. But it is clear that everybody now, maybe even Hezbollah itself, is ready to compromise now where it has not been ready to compromise before.
And what about Iran? What about Iran? Will Iran compromise as far as using its proxies and causing trouble in the region?
By not supporting Hezbollah in the way that people thought it would, Iran has basically not just weakened Hezbollah, but weakened itself. And today Hezbollah cannot claim that it has the support of Iran as it used to before the recent events. So that's not to say that Iran will resist any political process. They will. But their ability to influence events, I think, has been weak.
Experts say that Tehran could have a nuclear weapon within just a few months. Should they be stopped from building it?
Well, Bill Burns said they need a week to build a nuclear weapon. Iran has taken a conscious decision not to build a nuclear weapon because that has also ramifications that maybe it does not want to face. I think that the region needs to be clear of all nuclear weapons, whether it is by Iran, whether it is by Egypt or Saudi Arabia, and certainly whether it is by Israel as well.
You don't see any grounds for optimism in the immediate future in this region, do you?
No, I don't. I'm afraid that in the short term, there is no political force that is willing to put on the table a serious initiative to end the occupation. And therefore, the violence will continue until other factors kick in. The demographic factor is kicking in. As I pointed out, there is a generational gap around the world where, the lesser you are in age, the more likely you are to support the Palestinian cause. These are positive factors, but they need time to kick in. In the immediate term, I'm afraid all what we will see is more violence.
Marwan Masha, on that somber note, thank you very much for being with us on Conflict Zone. Thank you.
Thank you.